Hello everybody, I'm Houston Brown with Houston Brown Photography, and in this video we're going to help this grass out a little bit and make it a little greener. Now there's a couple of techniques. We'll go over both. Pros and cons to both, in my opinion. Not too many, but one's a little bit easier. Now it all depends. I usually take my time with edits, and if I just started this channel, so you're probably going to hear me say this again and again. I usually do a little bit higher end, generally homes, so they'll spend the money, so I'll spend the time. I just want to say that up front because I know there's a lot of you that can't spend the time because you're doing several houses in a day and you got to get those pictures out. Completely understand that. So anyways, this is the before and this is the after. So if you're interested in sky replacement, I have a video that shows a little trick that I use with probably a normal way that you do it, but I throw in a little inner glow that will help you with those fringing of the trees. You click right here to see that video. On this particular image, I use the Hue and Saturation adjustment layer to do that. All right, the first thing I want to do is get rid of these two spots. I'm going to use my healing brush. I guess you could use a spot healing brush, but I like to kind of control where my source is coming from. In this case, I'll make this a little smaller. Don't want to bore you with all these little tiny details. I'm sure you guys know how to do this simple stuff. I'm going to zoom out. And the next thing I'm going to do, create a new layer. We'll call this green grass. And this is just with painting. I'll say okay, because our next thing we're going to do is with hue adjustment saturation. So in this one, we would just go in here and pick a green. I'm going to use this green grass back here because I kind of want to match it. This patch of grass back here doesn't look too bad. I might want to go a little bit darker because I'm going to use overlay or soft light, and that tends to lighten things up, but we can still adjust that. So that's a good starting point. Increase my brush size, and I can just start painting. Oops, I'm not on my brush. Need to be on my brush. Brush, I'm gonna give myself a little soft edge. I'm holding down the Option Control button on the keyboard. This is the way I like to adjust my brush. I mentioned this in a couple other videos. If I hold this down and go left and right, it changes the size of the brush. Up and down is the hardness, which I love. I don't see too many people use this. They're either using the bracket keys, or they're going up here and doing it up here, or they're right clicking, and selecting it here, none of which I like. I love this Control Option keyboard shortcut. This is very easy to change. Anyways, a little tip for you. So now we're just going to simply just start painting. I'm going to change the blend mode of this to soft light and just start painting in here like this. Now, what I like to do, I haven't done here because I'm just real quickly doing this. Let's make this a little bit smaller and brush a little bit bigger. I didn't mean for that to come up. And I'm not going to bore you with the details. You can see where I'm going with this. So that doesn't look too bad. The browns are still kind of brown, and let's go with overlay. That's a little too dark. Of course, we can just adjust our opacity if we want to. And again, I was trying to go for this back here. And you can play with this. So overlay or soft light, and then you can adjust accordingly. If soft light is not right and it's not dark enough, just duplicate the layer and then play with the opacity on the second layer to start making it a little darker, and just adjust from there. So what I didn't mention, what I would normally do, now you don't have to do this, is I would go in here and make a selection. This is a pretty easy picture to go in here and just do it freehand. So this isn't a good example of why I would do that. But I would usually take the pen tool and go around this edge. And then that way I can just paint as sloppy as I want. I can try different techniques without having to get too critical. But that's up to you. And I'm not going to bore you with going around this with the pen tool. But let's go to the next technique, and I'm going to turn these off. I'm going to put a hue saturation adjustment level in here. And now I am going to go through here and I'm going to cut this out, and you're going to see why in a minute, because I'm going to colorize and I don't want to colorize the whole image. I'm going to have to cut it out anyways because I'm going to use this mask to isolate the grass. So again, like I said, I'm not going to bore you, so I'm going to go in here with the pen tool and fast forward through this and make my selection. All right, so now that I made my pen tool selection, all I got to do is hit Command Enter to make that a selection. Now I can go up here and I'm going to fill that with black, which is probably the opposite that I want. And I'm going to hit Colorize, and all I have to do is invert this mask, Command I. Now I'm isolated to the grass. Of course, I didn't want this. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to paint with black. Bring this flower bed back. Like I said, I won't bore you and go in here with the little grubby details, but you get the idea. So, and you're saying, I thought you said you weren't going to bore us. Okay, so here we go. I can't help myself sometimes, right? You guys get like that, where you just want to do something real quick, but just all these little things, you just can't let it go. Okay, so now we got our green saturation. That's not really the color we want. And I'm looking at this in the background too. It's a little too limey greeny. So I'm just going to go over here and highlight this 82 and move it down a little bit, maybe move it up. Oop, that's looking pretty good. It's a little too bright. So I'm going to go down here to my lightness and bring the darkness down a little bit. And this is one of the reasons I like the hue saturation technique a little better, because you can tweak it and adjust it. If you use the paintbrush, you really don't have as much control after the fact. You got your opacity, like we saw before, and you can duplicate, and you can change blending mode to overlay. And I imagine there's some other blending modes that you might be able to test. But I use this 99% of the time. And because I can tweak it and get pretty close to where I want. So I'm still looking at the background. Let's go to saturation. I'm going to take the saturation down a little bit. And you can tweak this. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this, but you can get real close to it by adjusting these. You could even throw a curves adjustment on here and maybe tweak it a little more. I'm going to leave it about there. Call that good and hit 0. Now, a couple of other things I might do. You see how let me turn this off and let's go back to this. You see how this still leaves these brown spots and everything when I use the overlay technique with a paintbrush? I don't really like that. And you're going to either get an all brown lawn in the wintertime, or you're going to get this splotchiness because this lawn hadn't been taken care of, although I'm sure you could bring it back in real life. So let's turn this back off and let's go back to this, and you can see everything's a little bit more even. Now you might say, yeah, well, that looks kind of fake. And if I had some dead leaves and all kinds of other stuff out here, I shouldn't say, well, I guess it would be dead leaves. I would go in there and mask those out, because when you do that, it makes it look more realistic. Now, one more step we can take to blend this in a little bit better, and I'm going to double click on this layer. And that's going to bring up our layer styles. And I'm going to go down here to blend if. So I'm going to say blend the underlying layer. Actually, I always get confused on this, and I use this quite a bit and it still doesn't. And you notice I'm going to hold down the Option key. If I just move this, you're going to get these harsh transitions from when it says, hey, when the underlying layer is this color, apply the technique, otherwise don't. So if I hold down the Option key or the Alt key on the PC, I can split this and make a much smoother transition. So what I'm doing here is I want to bring just enough of that back to where it doesn't look so fakey, artificially, whatever the word might be. Okay, so I think somewhere in there, and I'm going to say, let's see the preview. Let's go before. And there's after. So I've lost some of my green, so I might bring this back over a little bit. And let's see our before and after again. So I'm kind of liking that because it looks more realistic. We're not looking for this perfect well, maybe we are. Maybe that's what the realtor wants. I try to get something that doesn't look like it's been colored, and which can be hard to do when you're trying to match color or make it just green grass. Fortunately, I had this to kind of match to, and I would call that pretty good. And that's about all there is to coloring grass. I appreciate you watching this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.